Select your fighter. Big Viper. Force Field. Here they come. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Double. Option. Double level 2. Missile level 2. Force Field. Destroy the core. Force field. Force field. Double level 2. Force level 2. Confirm huge life force on the radar. Shoot the center. Be on your guard.
That doesn't hurt.
Force field. Double level 2. Destroy the core. Black hole vanished. Drive system switched to normal mode. Force field. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Flush all of them. Here they come. Crush all of them. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Speed up. Speed up. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Watch your back! Destroy the core!
hope you can entertain me.
Destroy the core. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Double. Option. Double level 2. Missile level 2. Force speed. Laser. Double. Convert huge life force on the radar. Attack from behind. turtle coming. Be on your guard. Force. Force field. Force field. Shoot the center. Force field. Double level one. Destroy all of them. Force field. Force field. Force field. Force field. Force field. Force field. Confirm huge life force on the radar. Shoot the center. Be on your guard.
That doesn't hurt.
Level 2. Level 2. Watch your back! Destroy the core! Black hole vanished. Drive system switched to normal mode. Destroy the core! Destroy the core. Here they come. Crush all of them. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Force field. Double level 2. Watch your back! Destroy the core! Force field. Force field. Force field.
I hope you can entertain me.
Destroy the core! Force field. Force field. Confirmed huge life force on the radar. Attack from behind. Laser, double, level 2. Watch your back! Force field. Laser level 2. Destroy the core. force field. Level 2. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Confirm huge life force on the radar. Shoot the center. Be on your guard.
That doesn't hurt.
Missile level 2. Double. Double level 2. Force speed. Force speed. Laser. Watch your back! Destroy the core! Black hole vanished. Drive system switched to normal mode. Laser level 2. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Crush all of them. Here they come. Crush all of them. Destroy the core. Force field. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Speed up. Speed up. Option. Missile. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Watch your back. Destroy the core. Force. Destroy the core. Laboratory 2. Force field. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Speed up. Confirm huge light source on the radar. Attack from behind. Force field. Missile level 2. Double. Option. Destroy the core. UFO coming. Laser level 2. Be on your guard. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Force field. Force field. Force field. Force field. Force Force field. Force field. Laser level 2. Double level 2. Force field. Laser level 2. Confirmed huge light source on the radar. Shoot the center. Be on your guard. Force field.
That doesn't hurt.
Level 2. Force field. 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 Laser level 2. Watch your back. Destroy the core. Black hole vanished. Drive system switched to normal mode. Destroy the core. missile. Destroy the core. Here they come. Crush all of them. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Destroy the core. Force missile level 2. Double level 2. Force speed up. Speed up. Missile. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Double. Speed up. Speed up. Missile. Watch your back! Destroy the core!
can entertain me.
Destroy the core. Ten, nine, eight, seven, 3, 1. Game over.